the individual who sees that something is amiss in the world, sees also the opportunity to make it better, and who pulls up his or her socks, creates the venture, summons the resources, assumes the risk, and drives that venture unrelentingly to bring about change that she or he envisions so clearly, that's an entrepreneur. That's a social entrepreneur. That is a rare individual.
Hi there. Welcome to Social Entrepreneurship School. In this lesson, we'll be talking about advocacy. The objective of social advocacy is to support the rights of those who cannot defend themselves as a means to achieving social justice. Advocacy is a tool for putting a problem on the agenda, providing a solution to that problem, and building support for acting on both the problem and the solution. Often the matter of upholding rights is on behalf of all people. For example, instances where common resources are exploited or damaged by a few select interests without fair compensation to the people or resources that are to be exploited. Environmental preservation, pollution reduction, and migrant labor issues are some examples. In our digital and networked age, advocacy is not just about influencing public policy, but also and first of all about influencing public opinion. It's a social change process affecting attitudes, social relationships, and power relations, aiming to strengthen civil society and opening up democratic spaces. To fulfill advocacy aspirations, efforts in coordination, strategic thinking, information, communication, outreach, and mobilization are required. For example, Greenpeace, one of the biggest advocacy organizations for environmental protection, is known for their ability to appeal to worldwide communities concerned with environmental issues. One of their strongest skills is their ability to unmask global concerns and corporations' worst environmental practices through campaigns. Their tendency to combine powerful information with compelling visuals and putting their content in broader contexts of popular conversation amplifies their messages.
Anti-whaling activists from Greenpeace chained themselves to the mooring ropes of a cargo ship in the Netherlands in an effort to prevent a ship from leaving to Japan. Greenpeace claimed the ship was illegally transporting 7 containers storing meat from 10 endangered fin whales. Trade in these and other whale species is banned under the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species. This treaty was signed by 175 countries with the exception of Japan and Iceland, which refused to comply with its legislation and continue to trade in whale meat.
The first step in designing any advocacy campaign is identifying the core issue and analyzing its roots and causes. Root cause identification makes your efforts more focused, since you'll be hitting the very reason or the problem root instead of wasting your resources on dealing with the symptoms of a problem. It's an essential part of finding the right solution and helps to identify the right responses. Many causes and solutions may apply to the problem, so it's up to you to find the ones that seem the most important and that your organization has the capacity to work with. Now that you know the root cause of the problems, you need to develop a vision and select the path for its solution. You know where to start. Now let's see where to go. There are a few questions you need to be able to answer. What do you want your society or the community to be like? What specific features would act as indicators for your ideal society? What needs to be changed for this to be achieved? What are the obstacles that stop this from happening? Issue selection or issue analysis is a process of weighing your expertise, capacity, and experience against the issue complexity. In other words, you need to make sure that the issue can be solved with resources that you can mobilize. Another important thing, you need to see that the path for a solution does exist and there are practical opportunities/possibilities to make the changes needed. Finally, there's a need to evaluate related risks to make sure they're manageable. The better you understand the external forces that influence your strategic issue, the more likely your advocacy effort will reach the desired result. When thinking about these external forces, don't just consider how they'll impact you and your enterprise, but also how they might affect campaign beneficiaries, organization donors, and other players in the field. Advocacy campaign stakeholders are usually divided into 4 groups. Targets: decision makers, people who have the power to make the necessary changes. People with influence over decision makers. Constituents: the people you work with and for. People who are expected to benefit from your advocacy. Allies: people who share your aims and can help to influence or put pressure on the decision makers. Opponents: people who are opposed to what you want to achieve and will try to block the changes you want to see. Once you identify the players that may impact the initiative and those who have the power to influence the solution, focus on the actors with the most connections or who are the most significant to your target. The International Organization for Migration started off as an operational logistics agency after World War II and has since broadened its scope to become the leading international agency working with governments and civil societies to advance migrant issues by assisting in the search for practical solutions to migration problems and to provide humanitarian assistance to migrants in need. They worked with local governments, diplomatic missions, and NGOs, those with high exposure to migrants, and joined the United Nations system in 2016, opening up access and raising their stature in moving forward with their mission. Highlight the nodes of power and start thinking of a strategy to approach them. Select the right tools to achieve your goals, how to influence targets, mobilize supporters, at the same time neutralize opponents. For quick and mass supporter recruitment, you need to perform the following actions. Reach out with awareness activities to undecided individuals. Inform people that most probably share your views. Initially avoid reaching out to individuals who are actively opposed to your arguments, because it may be that any arguments presented to them will intensify their opposition, no matter how valid and well presented they may be. Reach out to individuals who are socially valued and are central figures in social networks. Have a trusted known person present the argument, since there may be valid and existing reasons to distrust information received from strangers. Effective communication is key to changing perceptions and achieving any social change, but communication for advocacy is not the same as, for example, more general communications, such as newsletters or fundraising materials or general information about your work. What defines advocacy communication is that it focuses closely on influencing specific audiences and using specific messages in order to deliver change in policy or practice. Successful advocacy communication requires clear objective, knowledge of the intended audience, language appropriate for that audience, and content that's short, specific, and precise. For example, a light-hearted color A5 leaflet with bullet points and pictures for the wider audience. A 3-page executive summary or policy brief with more details for interested stakeholders and senior officials. A 20-page policy report capturing your key research findings, analysis, and policy recommendations for officials, administrators, practitioners, and other organizations. A 1-page press release on a special issue day to attract the attention of news media. Look at how Namati champions and promotes their own work while raising awareness by presenting an engaging and general narrative of problems and solutions.
The 4 billion people around the world who live without the protection of the law. A lack of legal protection is a source of repression and conflict, a root cause of deprivation and an affront to human dignity. But there is a solution. Legal empowerment. It puts the power of the law into the hands of people who previously knew little about their rights, or who saw the law as something to fear. It can trace its roots to the 1950s in South Africa, when grassroots advocates, known as community paralegals, began to help people survive and resist apartheid. Today, legal empowerment programs all over the world provide concrete solutions to deprivation and injustice. But too often, legal empowerment programs operate in isolation and at a small scale. Namati works with inspiring groups in many countries to deploy frontline legal advocates. These advocates are taking on some of the greatest challenges of our times, making healthcare accountable to patients, helping historically stateless people to secure citizenship, protecting community land rights, and enforcing environmental laws. Instead of solving problems on behalf of their clients, our community paralegals solve problems together with their clients, putting them in a stronger position to tackle similar problems in the future. From every one of these cases, the paralegals collect data, which we use to advocate for policy changes that can improve the lives of millions. We are building a legal empowerment movement that already represents hundreds of organizations. That makes thousands of grassroots legal advocates, learning from each other and empowering communities across the globe.
After putting in all that effort to try to connect with your audience, you can use these indicators to measure the outcomes of your campaign. Policy gains. Are there specific changes in policy, practice, and/or institutional reforms? Implementation gains. Are there state policies implemented related to the cause, whether they've changed due to your efforts, and what impact or lack thereof the change had on the people and communities? Political and democratic gains. Is it the case that civil groups have gained increasing recognition as legitimate actors, and has their access to governments and other institutions improved? Civil society gains. Are there improved cooperation between civil groups? Partnership gains. Are there any formation or strengthening of regional and international networks that can effectively address international institutions? Organizational gains. Has your own organization enjoyed an increased profile, respect as a credible source of information, increased funding, etc.? Now that we've covered the basics of advocacy, it's time for you to brainstorm some ideas of your own. How would you go about raising awareness for your issue? Who are the stakeholders and target audience? What are the channels that you think will reach them most effectively? Tell us about your ideas in the discussion page.